Hello students, this is Upendra Joshi, your online English guide from English Magus. Welcome to our video lesson The Adventure, Chapter 4 from the CBSE Class 11 English Hornbill textbook. Before we commence the detailed explanation of chapter, let us know briefly about its author. Jayant Narlikar is a proponent of the steady-state cosmology. He developed with Sir Fred Hoyle the conformal gravity theory, commonly known as Hoyle-Narlikar theory. It synthesizes Albert Einstein's theory of relativity and Mach's principle. It proposes that the inertial mass of a particle is a function of the masses of all other particles, multiplied by a coupling constant, which is a function of cosmic epoch. In cosmologies based on this theory, the gravitational constant g decreases strongly with time. Now get ready for the detailed understanding of the text of the chapter. So let us know what this chapter is about. In The Adventure by Jayant Narlikar, Professor Gaitondei experiences an alternate reality where historical events differ, notably the Maratha victory at Panipat. His exploration in Bombay reveals a flourishing East India Company. After being knocked unconscious, he returns to his familiar world. So Rajendra explains the experience using catastrophe and quantum theories, suggesting multiple realities. Now the chapter begins. I would recommend you to pause the video at each new slide and read the text before you hear the explanation. With this, you will have better results. In this chapter, you will witness a strange phenomenon portrayed by the author. You will see Professor Gaitondei living in two different worlds. Professor Gaitondei is the main character in the lesson. While living in 1986, he experiences pre-independence time period in India of 1920 and then again comes back to 1986. Let us enjoy this story of unique experience. In the beginning lines of the chapter, we see the Jijmata Express speeding from Pune to Bombay. According to the author, its speed was much faster than the Deccan Queen. There were no factories outside Pune. The train reached its first stop, Lonavala, in just 40 minutes. After that, the train went through a familiar hilly area. It briefly stopped at Karjat and then sped up even more, passing through Kalyan quickly. Here, for your clarity, Professor Gaitondei is already in the pre-independence time period in India, so let's enjoy the story further. Meanwhile, Professor Gaitondei, who was on the train, was thinking about his plan for when he would arrive in Bombay. As a historian, he decided to visit a large library to read history books. This would help him understand the current situation. He also planned to return to Pune later to discuss everything with Rajendra Deshpande, who could help him make sense of what had happened. Professor Gaitondei wondered if Rajendra Deshpande existed in this world. Here, let me make it clear to you who Rajendra Deshpande is. He is a significant character who is a good friend of Professor Gaitondei. Rajendra Deshpande is depicted as a knowledgeable individual who attempts to explain Professor Gaitondei's extraordinary experience through the lens of scientific theories. Let us continue our chapter. The train stopped at a small station called Sarhad after passing through a long tunnel. An Anglo-Indian in uniform checked permits on the train. Khan Sahib, another passenger, explained that this was where British rule began. Professor Gaitondei confirmed it was his first time going to this Bombay. Professor Gaitondei asked Khan Sahib about his journey to Peshawar. Khan Sahib explained that he would take the frontier mail from Victoria Terminus in Bombay to Peshawar, passing through Delhi and Lahore. The journey would take until the day after the next day. Khan Sahib then talked about his business and Professor Gaitondei listened to learn more about life in this different India. Here, different India means he was already experiencing India of the past. Students, here you have to continuously keep in mind that Professor Gaitondei is in the past India. While living in 1986, he is experiencing pre-independence India of the past. Let's continue the chapter. So as the train passed through the suburbs, they saw blue carriages with GBMR written on them, which stood for Greater Bombay Metropolitan Railway. Khan Sahib pointed out the small Union Jack flag on each carriage indicating British territory. Here let me tell you, Union Jack stands for the British flag. So the train slowed down after Dadar and finally stopped at Victoria Terminus. So the station was very clean and the staff included Anglo-Indians, Parsis and a few British officers. When Professor Gaitondei left the station, he saw a large building with East India House, headquarters of the East India Company, written on it. This shocked him because the East India Company had been closed down after 1857 revolt, according to history books. But here it was still active. He realized history had changed somehow and needed to find out how and when it had happened. Dear students, just to remind you, Professor Gaitondei will see totally a different history of India. In reality, these historically changed events had never happened in India. At the end, you will come to know why he was experiencing these unique events. In this section, we'll learn Professor Gaitondei exploring the pre-independence Bombay, which had never existed ever in the real history of India. Walking down Hornbill Road, he saw different shops and office buildings. There was no handloom house building, but instead, there were British stores like Boots and Woolworth and offices of British banks like Lloyd's and Barclays, making it look like a high street in England. Professor Gaitondei turned onto Home Street and went into the Forbes building. He asked the receptionist to meet Mr. Vinay Gaitondei, his son. She checked the list but couldn't find anyone with that name in any branch of the firm. She asked if he was sure Mr. Vinay Gaitondei worked there. Professor Gaitondei was disappointed but not surprised. If he was dead in this world, there was no guarantee his son was alive. He thanked the girl and left the building. He wasn't worried about where he would stay. So his main concern was to get to the Asiatic Society Library to solve the history mystery. After a quick lunch, he headed to the town hall. He was relieved to see the town hall was still there and that it had the library. He went inside, asked for history books including his own 5 volumes and started reading. His books arrived. Volume 1 covered history up to Ashoka, Volume 2 up to Samundragupta, Volume 3 up to Muhammad Ghori, and Volume 4 up to Aurangzeb's death. Everything was as he knew it until the last volume. Reading the 5th volume from both ends, he finally found where history had changed. It was the Battle of Panipat. The book said the Marathas won the battle, defeated Abdali, and chased him back to Kabul. The Maratha army was led by Sada Shivrao Bhau and his nephew Vishwas Rao. Here again a reminder, students, in reality Abdali's troops had defeated the Marathas at the Battle of Panipat. So let's continue the chapter. The book didn't detail the battle but explained its consequences for India's power struggle. Professor Gaitondei was engrossed. The writing style was his, but he was reading it for the first time. The Maratha victory boosted their morale and established their power in northern India. The East India Company, seeing these events, paused its expansion plans. For the Peshwas, the victory increased the influence of Bhau Sahib and Vishwas Rao, who became the leader in 1780. The troublemaker Dada Sahib was sidelined and eventually retired from politics. The East India Company struggled against the new Maratha ruler Vishwas Rao and his brother Madhav Rao. They combined political skill with bravery and expanded their influence throughout India. The East India Company was reduced to small areas near Bombay, Calcutta and Madras, like the Portuguese and the French. The Peshwas kept the Mughal regime in Delhi as a puppet for political reasons. In the 19th century, they recognized the importance of Europe's technological advancements and set up their own science and technology centers. The East India Company offered aid and expertise, which were accepted only to make the local centers self-sufficient. In the 20th century, inspired by the West, India moved towards democracy. The Peshwas lost their initiative and were replaced by elected bodies. The Sultanate in Delhi survived but had no real power. The Shahanshah of Delhi was just a figurehead approving the parliament's decisions. As he read, Professor Gaitondei began to understand the India he saw. It was a country that had not been enslaved by the British and knew self-respect. For commercial reasons, it had allowed the British to keep Bombay, with the lease expiring in 2001 according to a treaty signed in 1908. Professor Gaitondei couldn't help comparing this India with the one he knew. Students, kindly note, Professor Gaitondei and Gangadhar Pant are the names of the same person. In pre-independent India, he was Professor Gaitondei, and in modern India of 1986, he was Gangadhar Pant. So let's continue the chapter. He felt his investigation was incomplete. How did the Marathas win the battle? He needed to find detailed accounts of the battle. Finally, he found a book that gave him a clue, and the name of the book was Bhau Saheb Banchi Bakhar. Professor Gaitondei didn't usually trust the Bakhars for accurate historical evidence, but he found them entertaining. Let me here explain that Bakhars are a form of historical narratives written in Marathi prose, which emerged as one of the earliest genres of medieval Marathi literature. They are known for chronicle historical events, particularly those related to the Maratha ruler Shivaji and the Maratha Empire. Bakhars often contain eulogies of heroes, stories of battle, and accounts of the lives of great men sometimes. He could find a small piece of truth in their exaggerated story. He found one now. It described how close Vishwas Rao came to being killed in a battle. A bullet missed his ear by a tiny margin, and even a small difference could have led to his death. At 8 o'clock, the librarian reminded the professor that the library was closing. Professor Gaitondei realized he was the only one left in the hall. So he asked the librarian to keep the books for him to use the next morning and asked when the library opened. The librarian was pleased with the professor's dedication and told him the library opened at 8 in the morning. So as the professor left, he put some notes in his right pocket and absent-mindedly put the Bakhar in his left pocket. He found a guest house to stay in and had a simple meal. Then he went for a walk towards Azad Maidan. At the Maidan, he saw a crowd heading towards a tent for a lecture. Out of habit, he went towards the tent. The lecture was already happening, but people were coming and going. Professor Gaitondei wasn't watching the audience. He was staring at the platform. On the platform, there was a table and an empty chair, which shocked him. He felt drawn to the empty chair, like iron to a magnet. He moved quickly towards it, surprising the speaker. The audience started shouting for him to leave the chair. The audience told him that the lecture series didn't have a chairperson and the chair was just symbolic. Professor Gaitondei found this ridiculous and went to the microphone to express his views, saying that a lecture without a chairperson was like Shakespeare's Hamlet without the Prince of Denmark. But the audience didn't want to listen. They were tired of formalities and just wanted to hear the speaker. They had abandoned old customs long ago and wanted the platform to stay empty. So despite his experience speaking at many meetings, Professor Gaitondei faced a hostile audience. They started throwing tomatoes, eggs, and other objects at him. He tried to keep talking but was eventually pushed off the stage by the crowd. Students, just for your clarity, after this incident at Azad Maidan, Professor Gaitondei stopped seeing the different India of the past. He again came back to the modern India of 1986. When he returned to the modern India, he found himself in a hospital. Now he is in the modern India of 1986, and with the help of his scientist friend Rajendra he is trying to figure out his strange experience of traveling to past and seeing the different historical events in that India. Kindly note, from henceforth, Professor Gaitondei is in 1986. Later, after having come to the modern world, Professor Gaitondei explained to Rajendra that he was found at Azad Maidan in the morning but was back in the familiar world. He wondered where he had spent those 2 days when he was missing. So Rajendra was shocked by the story and asked the professor what he was doing just before his accident with the truck. Students, here for your clarity, let me tell you that before drifting to the past, Professor Gaitondei had met with an accident while traveling to Pune, where he had to give lecture on catastrophe theory and its possible implications on Battle of Panipat. Professor Gaitondei explained that he was thinking about the catastrophe theory and its implications for history when the accident happened. So Rajendra, smiling, realized this was significant. To prove his experience was real, Gaitondei showed Rajendra a torn page from a book. Rajendra read it and his expression became serious. Professor Gaitondei explained he had accidentally taken the Bakhar with him when he left the library. He realized this when paying for his meal and planned to return it the next day. However, during the chaos at Azad Maidan, he lost the book, but luckily the torn page with important evidence remained. The page described how Vishwas Rao narrowly missed being killed, which inspired the Maratha army and changed the battle's outcome. Rajendra read it again and saw the significance. Gaitondei showed Rajendra his own copy of the Bakhar, which said Vishwasrao was hit by the bullet. This difference was crucial. Rajendra admitted that until he saw the evidence, he thought Gaitondei's experience was fantasy, imagination, but now he saw that facts could be stranger than fantasies. Gaitondei was eager to know more. Rajendra began explaining two scientific theories to make sense of Gaitondei's experience. He mentioned the catastrophe theory, which they had discussed at a seminar, and now it applied to the Battle of Panipat. The outcome depended on leadership and troop morale. Vishwasrao's death was a turning point that led to the Maratha defeat. Rajendra continued that Gaitondei's evidence showed what happened when the bullet missed Vishwasrao. This boosted the Maratha army's morale, leading to their victory. Rajendra pointed out that small changes in critical events could have significant impacts. The death of Vishwasrao, heir to the Peshwa, was pivotal in the Battle of Panipat. It devastated troop morale, leading to Bau Sahib's disappearance and the army's subsequent defeat due to lost leadership and spirit. Gaitondei compared this idea to the Battle of Waterloo, where Napoleon could have won. He argued that while it is interesting to speculate, we live in a world with a unique history. Rajendra countered, suggesting that reality might not be unique. In these lines, Rajendra challenges the notion of reality, suggesting it extends beyond our sensory experiences and may have unseen dimensions. He invites Gangadhar Pant to consider a broader definition of reality that includes potential alternate manifestations. Here, Rajendra Deshpande is explaining to Gaitondei that physicists found that unlike bullets, whose paths we can predict, electrons behave unpredictably even when we know the laws they follow. This uncertainty in quantum systems suggests multiple realities could exist, challenging our understanding of a single definitive reality. Rajendra explained quantum theory's indeterminacy, according to which reality might have multiple versions, especially evident in experiments with small systems like atoms. The behavior of such systems cannot be predicted definitively. An electron's position can only be given as probabilities, not certainties. Rajendra used the example of an electron to explain that different worlds could exist where the electron is in different places. These alternative worlds are possible, but we only experience one at a time. Gaitondei asked if these many worlds could interact. Rajendra explained that they could, especially at the microscopic level, where electrons can jump between energy states, emitting or absorbing radiation. Rajendra suggested that Gaitondei might have transitioned from one world to another and back. This could explain his experience of two different histories of India. Catastrophic events might offer multiple paths for reality, and Gaitondei experienced two of them. Rajendra explained that Gaitondei's transition allowed him to experience two different worlds. The Battle of Panipat was the changing point where history split into two paths. Gaitondei didn't travel in time but experienced a different present. Gaitondei wondered why he made the transition. Rajendra admitted that many scientific questions remain unsolved, but guessed that Gaitondei's thoughts about the catastrophe theory and the Battle of Panipat during the accident might have triggered the transition. Rajendra thought that Gaitondei's thoughts on catastrophe theory and the Battle of Panipat during his accident might have triggered his transition into an alternate reality. He said it was just his guess. Rajendra joked that Gaitondei could now share his real-life experience instead of just speculating. Gaitondei, however, was serious. He explained that his 1000th lecture actually happened at Azad Maidan, where he was interrupted. He told Rajendra he wouldn't preside over another meeting and had informed the Panipat seminar organizers of his regret. So with this, chapter ends. Here is a list of figures of speech used in the chapter. Pause the video and go through them. Kindly like and subscribe if you found the video helpful. Thanks for watching the video.